When people talk about the great gold rushes of the American West, the same names always come up. California, Colorado, Alaska. But hidden in the mountains and sagebrush of central Wyoming is a gold rush most people have never heard of, a rush that created Boomtowns almost overnight, lured in thousands of fortune seekers, and then collapsed so fast it left behind ghost towns, abandoned mines, and a mystery that still hangs over the landscape. Because Wyoming's gold rush wasn't just a story about treasure. It was a story about rumors, hard rock, broken fortunes, and promises that never quite paid off. At the center of it all was South Pass, a windswept stretch of country that had already become one of the most important gateways in the American West. Wagon trains heading to Oregon and California crossed here by the thousands. Immigrants, traders, soldiers, and prospectors all passed through this corridor for decades. And some of them may have crossed right over gold without realizing what was under their feet. This is the story of Wyoming's gold rush secrets, and why one of the West's forgotten mining booms still refuses to die. Long before Wyoming became famous for ranching, Yellowstone, or wide-open plains, South Pass was known for one thing: access. Unlike the dramatic mountain crossings farther north, South Pass offered a relatively easy route through the Rockies. That made it one of the most heavily traveled passages in the West. But while most people were focused on getting through it, a few were paying attention to the streams, the gravel bars, and the quartz outcrops scattered across the hills. Rumors of gold had circulated through the area for years. Some stories claimed prospectors had found traces as early as the 1840s. Others suggested emigrants noticed glitter in the streams but kept moving west, more interested in California than in stopping to mine a remote patch of Wyoming wilderness. Whether those early stories were true or exaggerated, one thing is clear. By the 1860s, South Pass had become a place where rumors of buried wealth were growing harder to ignore. Then, in 1867, everything changed. That year, prospectors working in the region made discoveries rich enough to trigger a real rush. The most famous of them was the strike that led to the Carissa Mine, one of the best-known gold mines in Wyoming history. News spread fast. Samples were sent out. Assays came back promising. And almost overnight, word raced across the frontier that South Pass might be the next big gold field of the American West. And that was all it took. Men came in with picks, pans, and wagons. Speculators came in with maps and claims. Merchants came in to sell supplies. And boomtowns began to rise from the Wyoming dirt. The South Pass Gold Rush gave birth to three names that still define the region today: South Pass City, Atlantic City, and Miner's Delight. South Pass City quickly became the center of the rush, a mining camp turned boomtown, packed with saloons, stores, boarding houses, and the constant noise of men convinced they were standing on the edge of fortune. Nearby, Atlantic City and Miner's Delight grew as rival camps, tied to the same dream: that Wyoming's gold fields would become one of the richest mining districts in the West. And for a moment, it really looked possible. Claims were filed by the hundreds. Money poured into the district. New arrivals kept showing up. Every rumor of a rich strike brought another wave of excitement. But buried inside the excitement was the first big secret of Wyoming's gold rush. The gold was real, but it wasn't easy gold. That was the problem. In the popular imagination, a gold rush means flakes in a pan, nuggets in a stream, easy money for anyone lucky enough to reach the right riverbank. But much of South Pass's wealth wasn't lying loose in the water. It was trapped in hard rock quartz veins. That meant the gold had to be mined, crushed, milled, and processed. It required expensive equipment, deeper shafts, more labor, and far more investment than the average prospector could manage on his own. Surface placer gold could be recovered in the early days, but once that easy material ran out, the district faced a much harder reality. Wyoming's gold rush was never going to be just a simple panning story. It was going to be a fight against the rock itself. And that brings us to the real reason Wyoming's gold rush burned so brightly, and then faded so quickly. The boom was built on expectation. The district had enough gold to attract attention, enough promising ore to inspire headlines, and enough early success to make people believe South Pass might become another California. But believing a mine will make millions and actually getting that gold out of the ground are two very different things. Hard rock mining is expensive. Transportation into the district was difficult. Machinery had to be hauled into a remote region. And many claims that looked promising at first simply didn't produce fast enough to satisfy the people betting on them. That's the second big secret of the Wyoming gold rush. The problem wasn't that there was no gold. The problem was that the gold was too difficult, too costly, and too slow to turn into quick fortunes. And in the American West, patience was always in short supply. Miners didn't stay where profits were uncertain. They moved on to the next rumor, the next strike, the next place where someone swore the ground was richer. Investors lost confidence. Excitement cooled. And by the early 1870s, the first great wave of Wyoming's gold rush was already fading. The Boomtowns didn't vanish overnight, but they started thinning out. Buildings were abandoned. Dreams went with them. And South Pass began to shift from a place of sudden opportunity into a place of unfinished promises. But if the rush faded, one thing refused to disappear: the belief that South Pass still had unfinished gold in it. And no mine symbolized that belief more than the Carissa mine. The Carissa became the district's most famous property not just because it helped launch the original rush, but because people kept coming back to it again and again, convinced that the next owner, the next machine, or the next investment would finally unlock the fortune hidden inside. That's what makes Wyoming's gold rush so unusual. It didn't end in one clean moment. It came back in waves. Years after the first rush collapsed, new operators returned. Investors tried again. More machinery was brought in. Deeper work was done. Every new effort was driven by the same idea: that the early miners had been close, very close, but had simply lacked the capital or technology to finish the job. Maybe they had stopped too soon. Maybe the richest ore was just deeper underground. Maybe the real fortune was still waiting. That hope kept South Pass alive long after most boomtowns would have been forgotten. And in a way, that may be the biggest mystery of all. Not whether there was gold. There was, but whether South Pass was ever truly a failed gold district, or a gold district that kept arriving too early for its own future. But South Pass left behind another secret, one far stranger than abandoned shafts or lost ore. Because one of the most important things to come out of Wyoming's gold rush wasn't gold at all. It was history. In 1869, at the height of the mining era, a man from South Pass City named William H. Bright helped introduce the bill that granted women the right to vote in Wyoming territory. Soon after, Esther Hobart Morris, also tied to South Pass City, became one of the first women in the United States to hold judicial office. Think about that for a moment. A rough mining district, full of prospectors, saloons, speculation, and unstable fortunes, also became one of the birthplaces of women's political power in America. That's one of the great hidden twists of the Wyoming gold rush. The camps of South Pass weren't just places where people chased treasure. They were places where the future of the American West was being shaped in ways no prospector could have predicted. So while many mining towns are remembered only for what they dug out of the earth, South Pass is remembered for something larger. It helped leave a mark on American democracy. Today, the gold rush towns of Wyoming still sit out on the land like evidence from another world. South Pass City survives as a preserved historic town. Atlantic City still clings to life, half living community and half relic. Miners' Delight lingers more like a ghost, a reminder of how quickly a town can rise when gold is discovered, and how quickly it can fade when the money runs dry. And that's why Wyoming's gold rush still matters. Not because it became the richest gold field in the West. Not because it produced the biggest fortunes. But because it tells a different kind of gold rush story, one built not on triumph, but on almost. Almost rich enough. Almost big enough. Almost successful enough to change everything. It was a gold rush driven by promise, and haunted by the fact that the promise was never fully realized. That's why the Carissa mine kept drawing people back. That's why South Pass still fascinates historians. And that's why the ghost towns of Wyoming feel different from so many others. They don't just feel abandoned. They feel unfinished. The wind still moves through the old mining country of South Pass. Past weathered buildings, past abandoned workings, past hills where prospectors once believed they were standing on the edge of a fortune. And maybe, in a way, they were. Because Wyoming's gold rush was never really about piles of treasure. It was about belief. Belief that the next tunnel would strike it rich. Belief that one more season, one more investor, one more machine would finally reveal the wealth hidden in the rock. Belief that this lonely corner of Wyoming was destined to become something bigger than a forgotten mining district. That belief built towns. It ruined men. It changed lives. And it left behind one of the West's most overlooked stories. A gold rush that came late. A boom that faded fast. A mine that refused to die. And a secret buried in Wyoming history. Sometimes the most fascinating treasure stories are not the ones where fortunes were made, but the ones where the promise of fortune never stopped echoing long after the gold rush was over.